All right, welcome to the fourth and final review of the evening. Up this time is BROK the InvestiGator, the Brawl Bar. Right. So, longtime viewers may remember that we featured this game, the base game, on the review show here about 2.5, 3 years ago. Um, and if you don't, the base game was a curious, if not interesting, mix of point and click adventure game meets brawler. And once again, since that review was a few years old, I'm trying to remember what I said about it then. And I think it was an interesting concept. I did not think that the systems came together all that well. It's like it's trying to be a peanut butter and chocolate situation. There's more mashed potatoes and ice cream. But if you had that point of view, then this DLC may be exactly what you're asking for. Because, well, the clue's in the name, the Brawl Bar. What this DLC does is it takes you to, it does the DLC thing of you're in a sectioned off area, which, for lack of a better term, very clearly comes off as DLC. In this case, it uses its own independent currency called C units. There's a leveling system in the base game that is completely glanced over, as in it does not use the leveling in the base game, and so on and so forth. That's because, you can access the DLC at any time, from the very beginning of the game to after the end. And more to the point, what the DLC actually does is it basically strips away all of the adventure game elements. They're not completely gone. Like, for example, the mobile barcode, those mobile things that you scan with your phone. They got a number of new hidden ones in the DLC as well. If I'm remembering correctly, 12. But by and large, this is all about the walk and brawl, to a certain extent, because instead of being structured like, a traditional brawler with very long levels that you walk and you fight a boss, you've seen the type. We reviewed one of these not too long ago in the takeover. These are structured more akin to challenge room. Short, bite-sized challenges that are that go by very quickly, at least in theory, because some are straightforward fighting affairs, some are a lot more gimmicky, whether that be adding horrible jump mechanics, like to downright platforming, which this game was not built for. Like, literally not built for this kind of gameplay. It's awful. But thankfully not too encountered. To, like, having to dispatch the enemies in stupid ways. Like, I think having to throw them into the river section of a stage. I couldn't quite figure out what they were asking. That happened on a couple of levels. Thankfully, if you get enough currency, you can skip a challenge. And there are 60 challenges in total. Also helping you out are various items that you can buy. Like, you can buy items that'll refill your health to a certain amount, or give you extra defense for like 30 seconds, that kind of deal. And that's really what encapsulates this DLC. Now here comes the hard part. In recommending this or not. Because, it's a fairly well put together DLC pack. But, okay, first of all, it's not enough to buy this game overall for this DLC. It's not that substantial. But more to the point, as far as, if somebody who enjoyed the base game should buy this, that's really difficult. Because it really depends on what you liked about the base game. To wit, if you like the investigator part of the game, i.e., if you came to the party for the point-and-click adventure stuff, avoid. It's not catering to that side of the equation. Now, on the walk and brawl side of things, I think I could recommend it on the basis if you liked the brawling in this game, not if you liked Brawler. Not surprising, it doesn't have the depth. It does have a surprising move roster. One might argue too large, but surprisingly, it lacks a throw, at least for your character, which is a huge oversight. Because throwing is a huge part of actual Brawlers mechanics, but it's also just like the structure is very bite-sized. It's very different from your traditional Brawler. And that's probably going to turn some people off. So this is kind of in a niche position, which is probably reflected in the fact that this is DLC. And compounding on that is the price. This is a pretty pricey affair at $10. And if you want to get the whole package, it's at $27. So it's quite hefty no matter how you look at it. So I'd have to go mild recommendation at most. Because I get that was the focus of this specific DLC in expanding or exploring the Brawler side to perhaps its fullest extent. But that's not what this game was really completely built off of. It was built off of being an X meets Y affair, and you're alienating a portion of your own base here.
If you're doing an X meets Y game and you make a DLC that's entirely Y.
Yes, exactly. So that's why recommending this is so subjective here. Once again, it's a decent thing on its own, maybe a bit overpriced, but it's like, if you're looking for a case in which BROK tries to solve a unrelated thing while, fighting maybe in a new style, that's not this. This is just, here's a bunch of rooms, go be good in them. So, I mean, there does seem to be its independent story beats, but once again, the fighting's the focus here. Right, so
I do imagine it's significantly easier to program in more fights with slightly different enemies than program in more point-and-click adventures.
Possibly. On the other hand, it did take 2.5 years for this content package to come out. So I can't speak to the ease of development. Like, anyway, so any other questions, comments, or concerns about the Brawl bar here? All right, then. So, yeah, that brings us to the close of another installment of the Fragments of Silicon reviews. So coming up on the week ahead, let me see. Coming up on August 27th, we'll be welcoming Xin Zhao of Savvy Soda. Worth noting, in spite of the Chinese name, it's actually an Australian development studio, which actually has its hand in a whole bunch of they're not just a games developer. They also develop the occasional non-gaming app, which we're probably not going to be covering because, this is a gaming podcast, not a office documents podcast or, an apps podcast. So we're probably not going to be talking about the private browsing white app too much. No, we're probably going to be talking about games like Archery Pro and Pixel Starships. They seem to be mainly a mobile games developer, but they have branched into both Steam and the VR space. So definitely a couple different branches there. And coming up on Friday, August 29th, if Petty's upcoming dental appointment doesn't get in the way, I haven't forgotten about that. But we'll be welcoming Servet Isoy and Muhammad Mustafa Yahya. I've probably butchered at least one of those names, of Blackburn Games. They're a Turkish developer and publisher. Gonna be upfront about this. One of the major topics, unfortunately, is going to be generative AI. Because, yes, they have used generative AI. From the looks of things, they like to use it in the marketing material. So, yeah, that's going to come up. If not this Friday, then whenever it gets rescheduled. Just, putting it on the table now, because I have advanced notice of this interview may be delayed. So with that in mind, until next time, I shall wish you good gaming.